ML site, if there's a listing of all the mandates that you as a trustee need to have, or if you had access to that. Because isn't this sexual harassment one?
It's annual.
It's an annual one, okay. But the other ones was just when you're newly elected.
There's Open Meetings Act one, and then there's the sexual harassment.
Every year. You would have to do sexual harassment every year.
Okay, so sexual harassment's every year, but hopefully the FOIA and the open meetings maybe is just.
He
after
just
you're
said
newly
FOIA is
elected.
annual. He just said FOIA is annual.
The FOIA is annual.
Oh, the FOIA.
I can do this before you got your ISS. Is there somewhere where there's either a document or a list of like all the things that like me as a new trustee like have to do? I don't know that I think Joe told me something to do with it.
Yeah. Joe,
Work this out.
is that cool if we make them a checklist? Like before I used to say, okay, this is what you need to do every year. And now I think you do some, I do some, so like we can put out there. Yeah, we could do that together and.
I know I'm sitting here completely not confident if I've done everything or not, so I don't, but I don't know if I've done it or not, because I don't know what all there is, so.
Yeah, 'cause I luckily flagged that email that you had sent, I think you and Mark had sent it out or something with that link. And I was like, yeah, I gotta get that done. So the other day I sat down and.
Well, I did mine, I'm gonna have to pull my certificates off. I did mine and I forgot to send them in and I, what did I say?
All right. For the new, which this is for everybody. You'll Google IML Guide for Newly Elected Officials. And there's a nice link and it has everything in it.
Does it have a checklist?
It's in summary form and it's not hard to read.
Okay.
It's not quite a checklist, but it's
We could
pretty,
make a checklist from there.
but it's pretty good.
We might want to, for
And
30 people.
And what's online is the 2023 edition, and so that's current.
You know, even as old timers, I need to. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Curly Buggins,
Present.
Page,
President.
Valley, Dana,
Present.
Wolfersberger,
Here.
Cummings, yes, Rapp. Present but not able to vote, correct?
Public comment. Are you're not here for public comment?
Not really.
Okay, very good. So, seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. We have exhibit 1 and 2 with our minutes for the January 9th meeting and also the approval of bills. It's listed in your packet. Is there a motion or is there any questions? If there's no questions, then we have a
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. I'm sorry.
Oh, I motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, you're gonna have to speak.
Sorry.
Angela, was that you?
It was, I was gonna.
Okay.
I may have started to raise my hand, she feels there.
Page,
yes.
Painter,
Yes.
Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Cummings. Yes. Sorry about that, Matt. I don't know if you know I'm hearing disabled.
No, that's fine, sorry.
All right, well, we'll move on down to new business. First item on our new business is discussion and presentation from the PPA solar option. for the sewer plant. And do we have someone to do a presentation about that?
We do, we have two people from Keystone, and they, I'm assuming they're on there, right?
Yes.
I guess I'll just go ahead and turn it over to you. If you'd introduce yourself and just let us know what you're offering.
Great. Joe, this is Laurelyn from Keystone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for the opportunity to present tonight. I also have one of Keystone's co-founders, Anthony Fotopoulos, on the line. Anthony has control of the screen, and I believe we do have the presentation up there, if you guys can see it.
No.
We're working on it.
It's,
Okay,
it's just,
okay.
Joe's got it up, Laura.
Okay, perfect. So again, just want to thank the mayor and the city council for the time today, and especially a shout out to Joe Hackney, who spearheaded a lot of the back and forth of this project for the last over a year. Been very helpful in getting us this far. So we appreciate the opportunity. I'm just going to jump right into the presentation, and then if you guys have questions, maybe either stop me or we can save them towards the end, whatever works best for you guys, if that's all right.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. So I know there's some new members. So some of you may be more familiar with the solar project, but we are a solar development company, and we work in doing a power purchase agreement. One of the benefits of the type of projects, solar projects we do, is that there's no upfront cost to the city. Keystone finances, develops, constructs, owns, and maintains the system. And the city is agreeing to buy the electric supply that's generated from the solar array at a fixed rate price. And there's some good savings for towns like St. Joseph. We've probably done, well, I know we have done more solar projects for wastewater treatment plants in Illinois in the last 5 years than any other company. So this is definitely in our wheelhouse, and we're really excited to have the opportunity to work with you if this is the way you guys decide to go. So yeah, we have 5 projects that are going up this year. We'd love to include you guys in that. I think we've also supplied Joe with some references and all that, and we can supply with whatever you need for due diligence. But one of the key things about Keystone is we're unique in that if you go to slide 4, Anthony, if you don't mind, we're unique in that we're a single source provider for solar. So that means that we don't only just develop, we're not just a developer of solar and then sell it. We develop, engineer it. We have in-house construction and project management. We finance it, and we are your long-term partners ongoing for the length of the power purchase agreement, which is 30 years. So it's a long-term partnership. We also own and maintain it through the life of the system. So there's no additional facilities management on the city's part or the village's part. So we are able to maintain and operate it throughout the entire length of the contract. If you, so the goal, the reason that it's very popular with wastewater treatment plants to go solar is obviously they use a lot of electricity. They're 24/7. There's typically, areas to build a ground mount solar because they're usually on the edge of town. So it's a way to go green, but ultimately, it's about there's a lot of solar savings that you're going to get from this. And we will, as we get into this, I will do a deeper dive. We've provided an Excel spreadsheet for both the rate offers that we have, and we'll jump into that in just a little bit. But for now, if you guys want to go to the slide 7, this location was chosen in discussion with the village. I know, Joe, you had said that you guys are looking to maybe move that to where the rest of the ball fields are. So we have located the panel on the existing ball field, but knowing that you're moving that ball field, and this gets us closer to the wastewater treatment plant. Joe, Is that confirmed? I know we kind of confirmed it last week. Is that still correct?
It's currently a parking lot right now. So the ball diamond is no longer there because they needed that space for the construction crew to bring stuff in and out. But by the time, whenever we get a provider selected for this, they should have the space available.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, well, that's good to confirm. Yeah, so, and this system size is the 410 kilowatt DC system. So it's not our biggest system. Just for background, we do this under Illinois' net metering program, and so we can build up to 2 megawatts or 2,000 kilowatts. We build, unlike many firms, we build some of these smaller systems, which technically this really would be, it's under a half meg. The smallest we've done is for Abington, which is 200. I think Georgetown is similar. We've done some very big projects for almost 2 megawatts for Lincoln. We're doing a big 1.7 for Canton, smaller one for Knoxville. So there's a lot that we have out there, again, for due diligence. And we're one of the few firms that will build these smaller systems. Like I said, the smallest will go that works in a power purchase agreement option for us is 200. So you guys aren't the smallest. It's a decent size. We're excited about it, but yeah, that's where you guys fell in, and that's what it's all based on the electrical bills, your kilowatt usage monthly and annually that you guys provided us earlier in the process. If you go to the next slide, this shows the rate of inflation for energy. And the reason it's probably a little bit higher than that right now, but this is over what, a 30, 40 year period. So you could see the orange line is Illinois, and it spikes up and goes down and spikes up. But the general trend is closer to like 4% if you mix all those years. And what we use, because we need to pick a rate for energy inflation, so you have something to compare, at least on the escalator rate. These are all Department of Energy numbers. You can see all the links at the bottom. This is where we're pulling our information. And we're actually even more conservative in our savings calculations. When we plug numbers in, we use 3.4% as the rate of inflation. And we'll get into that. I just wanted to explain why we have this slide in there. This will make more sense when we get into the savings analysis. Now, if you go to the next slide, on slide 9, this is just the summary of what we're proposing to do if you guys want to do the project. Again, it's a 410 kilowatt DC system. There's no investment from the village or operational responsibilities. It's a 30-year agreement to purchase electricity at fixed rates. So we've given you two rates, two offers. One is at 0.459, which is a 41% first year savings compared to your current bill, which is around 9 cents, a little over 9 cents. And then it escalates at 2% per year, which is less than the historical rate increase that we just discussed. That's really kind of at 4%, but we use 3.4. Joe had asked if we could do any better with the escalator, so we were able to bring it down a little bit from where we were originally at. So we were able to bring it down to 2%. And then the other rate that we have, it's a little higher starting rate. It's still 30% off your current rate. But it stays fixed. So it'd be locked in there for the entire 30 years. And either way, you know what your rate is each year. Obviously, the flat rate's pretty straightforward. We can get into how the escalator works in just a minute. But if you look at both of the cumulative savings, depending on the offer, it's a little less with the escalator. But it's still significant. It's 1.2 million. And the flat rate actually is more savings over the term cumulatively at 1.4. But both are over $1 million. It's pretty significant savings right off the bat and year after year. You do have an option with Keystone to purchase a system in years 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. It probably doesn't make sense to do that. We've kind of gone, I think, a little bit further with some of the city council members. It's St. Joseph that had questions about this, so we can come back to it. But you do have an opportunity to purchase the system at fair market value each of those years. So that's an option. I don't think a whole lot of other firms offer, but Keystone does. And we're assuming any property taxes charged are responsible of the village or abated. So that's the basics. Anthony, do you want to talk about the 25K interconnection cost? Why that's in there based on other projects we're working on?
Yeah, we put in our budget 25,000 for the utility for any upgrades they have. If it's higher than that, then we just need to talk. That's the number that's included in our number. We've been doing this for several years in Illinois. It used to be always zero. Now it seems like they always find something to charge us. So we're just being clear that this is what's in our number. If they go above 25 grand, we just had two cities last year that were under 25 grand. Others were actually zero. So it should be enough, but we're just being clear that that's what's included in our number.
Thanks, Anthony. So before we go into the spreadsheets of the rates and the savings analysis, any questions at this point?
So,
I just have, what was it originally? They said they were able to reduce, the escalate down to 2%. It was originally higher. What was it?
It was two. Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
It's 2.25%. So bring a quarter off, yeah. And actually, is that the only question? Because we can kind of jump right in with that into looking at the escalator rate on the spreadsheet, if we want to bring that up.
You're still buying electricity from these people.
Right.
It's not like the net metering. Now I don't know when the question should be asked, but so if 5 years from now, Ameren would say, we're done with this net metering, it's not working out for us. We're not doing this anymore. What happens to the program we have with you?
Well, they can't do that, but I'll let Anthony. Anthony, you want to handle that one?
Yeah, so this is a state law, net metering, that's been in place for several years. It's not really up to Ameren to say we can't do it or we don't like it. So the law would have to change, which is, a risk with anything. I can say that in all the states in the US, Nevada tried to change it, and they tried to make it go retroactive. And there was a lot of lawsuits because not just towns, but businesses, all kinds of people get into these arrangements for, assuming the laws are correct and valid. So if they ever do change stuff, it's always for new people. It's not going back and saying, well, what was the law back then is not valid, and whatever deal you did, tough. So we've never seen it in any state in the US where they've changed laws and gone retroactive and been successful. Nevada was the only one that tried, and it went to court, and they ended up reversing it.
But if they did, then our contract is null and void at that point.
Well, there is a change of law. There is a change of law provision in the agreement. I got to look what it says. But no, it wouldn't automatically go null and void. Normally what would happen if there was no net metering is you'd still be able to use a portion of the electricity. So I think what it says in change in law is we work together to do the best we can. Again, I think the chance of this is very remote. But still, if we haven't sent you our power purchase agreement, it's from the National Renewable Energy Lab. We're happy to share it, and we can look at that exactly.
If anything would ever happen with Ameren where things are super good and their rate would drop below what we're buying from you, does our rate go down to that?
No, so it's a fixed rate. It's a long-term contract. That's the first thing. And then it's a fixed rate. So the rate on like the escalator is over 40% below what you're paying now. but that is the rate. It's the rate regardless. Rates generally go up, but they do go down sometimes. But with that kind of a discount, even the flat rate, it'll never increase, and you're still, I believe, 30% lower than where you are today. But yeah, that is a risk. If power ever became free, then if that's what you think, then this would not be a good agreement to do.
Yeah, and just to back up what Anthony's saying, I mean, so a lot of this, it's a long-term contract. It's fairly low risk, but your hedge is that you think over a 30-year period that, you know, energy rates are going to come down. And that's kind of like the chart. If you kind of actually do the research and dig into it, yeah, it goes up and down. And we know that as consumers, and, you know, we all deal with Ameren or ComEd or one of those. So we all have seen that over time. So that's, you know, there's no cost to the city. You're not risking any dollars. Your hedge is that you think, you know, if you think energy prices are going down over the 30-year period below where these rates are, you know, that's your hedge. So what we're saying is we don't have any factual evidence of that happening in Illinois. And that's why we put that chart, but you're welcome to go into those links and take a look at that yourself. But as we said, we use 3.4%. And if you guys want to look at the, if you want to pull up the escalator rate, I can kind of explain and jump right in of how we figured all this out, you know, how to read this particular chart. So if we go down, here's the escalator rate. If you look at the bottom right corner, you can see estimated electric usage history. And these are all actual numbers. These are pulled directly from your Ameren bills. So this is what you're using. It gives us a total for your annual usage based on the 12 months. And if you go to the top right, if you look to the left there, array output, it says 95% percentage of total usage. So this is designed to offset 95% of your annual usage. You have a DC rating. If you go to the top at system info, to get to 95%, that would require 410 kilowatt DC array, which is what we have proposed. And then if you go to utility PPA info just below that box, you can see offsettable supply price per kilowatt hour. And that is your current rate with Ameren, which is 0.933. Right below it, annual supply inflation rate. That's where we're pulling that inflation number, which is actually probably more above 4% now. We're being conservative at 3.4% as annual energy inflation. And then below that, PPA price, that's Keystone's offer of the rate we can give you, which is 0.549 with a PPA escalator of 2%. So if you go below that, you see your year one discount from your current rate is 41%. And over the 30-year period, it's 6%. And then as you go down to the bottom here, you can just see year after year, current utility rate, new solar rate, and then in the right corner, annual savings. The first year, 21,000. And then year after year is those, you know, as you're at 2%, and then inflation is at 3.4, showing you estimates for your annual savings, and it also starts adding up year after year, cumulative savings, giving you, as you see it there at the bottom in yellow, the 1.27, almost 1.3 million in total savings if you went with the escalator. If we
does that include what Ameren's going to charge us?
So this is for 95% of your supply bill. So we sent a bill snippet that shows the portion of your bill that we're offsetting. It's just the supply portion of your bill. And yeah, Ameren doesn't charge you that. I believe right now or the last bill we saw, you're buying from Homefield Energy. That's the section of your bill that we're offsetting, the supply portion.
Right. So the numbers you have up here still shows what we're going to pay, what we have left to pay.
This is just the supply portion. So it has what you're paying today on your current contract that we've gotten from your bills versus what you would pay us and what you would save. But that's just on the supply portion from your energy supplier. If you look at your bill, there's sort of three sections. There's a bottom section, which is like taxes and fees. That still gets charged with or without solar. And then the top of your bill is what they call like demand or delivery charges. And those are required to be paid regardless of whether you do solar or not. So the top section, demand and delivery, and the bottom section, fees, those get charged with or without solar, and they're not included in our number.
And then, so we had a guy in here last time talking about buying it and showed over $1 million in incentive. And I take it you will take all that money?
Yeah, so our revenue, like our income by owning the asset, is from the state incentives, from the federal tax incentives, and then from you paying us for the revenue. That's our sort of income, but all the costs are on us. So we pay for the system ourselves. If you were to buy it yourself, you know, a system like this will cost somewhere around $1 million. If you paid for it, then you would get 100% of the savings yourself, right? So there would be no cost for the energy. And you can get the federal incentive yourself, and you would get the state incentive. So all those monies would flow to you, if that makes sense. We wouldn't be involved.
Right, and if I remember, I'm not gonna put words in your mouth, but I was thinking the last time you talked, if a municipality could afford to buy it, they'd be better off going that way than going this way. You just help municipalities that can't afford to do it, but still want to save some money.
Yes and no. So it's usually a better deal for someone to own it themselves. So that I think is what you're saying, but not like a massively better deal. What usually happens when you own it yourself, though, is you're in the solar business, right? So you're responsible for it producing, you're responsible for, you know, the construction of it, making sure it's built. With our offer, it's kind of making it into a service, right? You're just committing to a price that's a good price. But yeah, if you're willing to deal with, you know, building it and then maintaining it and making sure it's working, yeah, it's probably a better deal. Because we're in business and you know, we make profit, right? And you would capture that profit yourselves.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
I noticed the second from the last bullet point from the bottom, it talked about property taxes. Would you own it? If you own the facility, would the property taxes, whatever it's valued at, go to you compared to if we owned it, it would be village property, village asset, non-taxable. Is that correct? Or what's the property tax? How would that figure into your calculations?
Yeah, so typically we're on all the municipal systems we've done, we have not been charged property taxes. And we always put in our presentation that it doesn't include property taxes. I got to check what the current rules are. Definitely for rooftop systems, there's no sales tax, there's no property tax assessed. And I think it's the same as long as it's behind the meter. So that's why we've never been charged. But we kind of put the taxes on you. If there is going to be property taxes, which we've never had on any of our municipal systems in Illinois, and there's, you know, dozens of them, that would be on you, your responsibility. So we're assuming no tax either way.
Okay, thank you.
And I have one other question too. When we talked before, did you say that, so you don't really charge us based off of an Ameren bill? You have your own program that assesses how much it produces, which actually shows more than what Ameren will actually give us, or am I misspeaking on that?
So Ameren measures at your meter for the whole treatment plant. our system will interconnect somewhere different than that. We don't connect to the meter. We usually connect to the main utility cabinet at the treatment plant. And there's a meter between the system and that interconnection point, a revenue grade meter. And that's what our systems connect to read the output of the system. So you'll know, and there's procedures in our agreement where it can be tested by either party, and it's available 24/7. It's online. You can access it. You can even put a link to it. Comes with the system that is sort of user friendly. You can put on your town website if you want to, or just give it to like the treatment plant manager or the utility director. But yeah, it's based on the actual production from the solar system, not on your total usage at the Ameren meter.
So it could be different.
Say
Or
that
it will-
again? Well,
it
they are
will-
different, right? Ameren is in and out, right? So it's what you're drawing from non-solar, right? You can be doing something else, minus what you're producing from the solar system. So that's what Ameren's concerned with, right? Their meter is measuring. Our meter is just measuring what we're delivering to you with the revenue grade meter. Does that make sense or maybe not?
Right, I mean, so we could end up paying you more than what Ameren's giving us credit for, is all I'm trying to make a point of, correct?
No, Ameren does not charge you for supply. All we're dealing with is your supply costs. Joe, I don't know if you have that bill snippet where we had marked it up in the past. If you could maybe show that to the town board. It's not in this. There it is. Yes. So this is your actual bill. So remember I said before there's 3 sections of your bill, top part, middle part, and bottom part. The top part is electric delivery. That is all about Ameren and their lines and the linemen. Those charges are charged with or without solar, and they are what they are, and that's what keeps Ameren running and the linemen able to service them when something bad happens, or, keep the grid running, basically. So we're not talking about those costs. Those costs will be the same with or without solar. Might be a little bit less with solar, but with or without solar, it's not in our savings calculations. And then the things on the bottom are sort of just fees, right? State and local taxes, other charges. Again, those aren't really impacted by solar, maybe slightly less, but generally are the same. The middle part is just a pass-through on Ameren's bill. On this bill of yours, it was Homefield Energy was your supplier. I assume that's still your supplier. So it's not an Ameren cost, right? It's charged by Homefield Energy, and that's what they're charging you, 9.3 cents per kilowatt hour. We would be offsetting that. You wouldn't be paying Homefield, you'd be paying us a lot less for a similar amount of electricity. But it wouldn't change what Ameren's being paid, what they're charging you for the delivery services or just the mandated, state and local tax stuff. Does that make sense? Does that help?
No, but that's all right.
But we would still pay Homefield a small amount because we're not offsetting 100% of the power, right? So there's 5%. We're basing the 553 number is 95% of our total. So
Correct.
There's still 5%, right? That we would, a small amount would go to Homefield. So correct.
Yeah, and you don't have to use Homefield. You can use whoever you like for that 5%. That's correct.
So here's my other question: is it the solar power produced every year drops? That's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. So most independent engineers factor in 0.5% degradation each year. It's called light induced degradation, and that's why our numbers go down by 0.5% each year. And yeah, it just, goes down a little tiny bit each year. That's just how it works.
And so that number that we would pay if it's Homefield would increase every year slightly, right?
Correct. That's correct.
I have a question on the electric delivery charges. If we owned the system, if we were owners of it, do those delivery charges change at all, or are those automatically set in whether you own it or doing the purchase?
Yeah, has no impact who owns the system or how the ownership works. It's just the way net metering works. You can offset your supply only. Now, if batteries were cheap, which they're not, they're very expensive and there's no incentive in Ameren for batteries, so they don't make sense. If we could somehow, batteries were free, we could offset your delivery charges too. Or you could offset your own delivery charges if you owned a battery system. Doesn't make economic sense in Ameren territory right now. And without batteries, there's nothing you can do to offset your delivery charges, whether you own it or whether, we own it. Doesn't matter who owns it. You just have to pay those without batteries.
Okay. The other question I have is, we were told if we owned the system that whatever during the summer months, obviously when it's generating more electricity through the solar, that Ameren would give you a discount. I mean, I know you can't like save that energy for your winter months, but during the winter months, obviously it's not going to be generating as much solar power.
That's the net metering.
Yeah, so is there, does that still work with your company so that whatever excess is generated during the sunny months, do we still get some kind of a credit through Ameren?
Yes, it's the same credit whether you own it or whether we own it. It's called net metering, and it's just a law in Illinois. And all it does is, we can probably show you example bills from other municipal clients that have solar, and basically it makes a bank section on your bill, and it shows if you over generate during the summer, here's your credits carried forward to the next month, and they carry for a full year. That's why we do all of our analysis on the year. But you don't want to produce in total over what your need is, because if you're over 100% of your usage, then they give you what they call avoided cost, which is like the wholesale rate for that energy. It's not worth very much. So we always designed at 95% to make sure that you'll have a little bit that you'll buy from Ameren or from Homefield or whoever you choose as your supplier for that 5%.
But with you, during the summer months, our bill's gonna be super high because it's producing a lot, but then in the winter, it's not gonna be as much because it's not producing as much.
That's correct. So we can work with you. We know what the expected production month by month is. But in terms of a budgeting perspective, in total over the year, it will be a lot less than what you're paying now. But month to month, you've got to make sure you understand, look, in May, it's going to be producing expected this amount. We need to make sure we have that money set aside. So in total for the year, you'll save a lot compared to this Homefield rate. But yes, month to month in December, the production is, if it's snowing, it's like half what it is in the summer. So the bill would be twice as much in the summer, half as much in the winter if it's covered in snow.
Anthony, do you want to bring up though how the 12 months, how the credits work and how it clears out in October and April, so they understand how the
we understand that part with Ameren. I'm just concerned with you. So our bill in May, June, and July, even August, could actually be more per month than what we're paying now. And then in the winter months, it could be lower, obviously, but in the peak months, we could actually be paying you more than we're paying in on our bill right now.
In terms of supply with the 40% discount, no, I don't think so. We could run the math and check. I don't think you would ever be more than what you're paying now with a 40%, greater than 40% first year discount. We're not 40% more in general. The reason it's so low in the winter is if they're covered in snow. There's almost no production when they're covered in snow. It just can't produce. The sun can't get through the snow. But in terms of the bill amounts, yeah, it varies depending on how much we produce. I don't think, and we're happy to check it, run the numbers on the expected production. I don't think even in the May, June timeframe, you would be up to what you're paying now per month because of that 40% discount.
But it could be close to it.
You could be close to it, sure. But to be clear, over a year, you're saving 40%, over 40%, right? Well, that's a fact.
Any other questions on that portion of it?
No, I did have one about, or when are you gonna get to, like, after 30 years and then you decommission it? Is that something we hold, what would that be, a bond of some sort? So like if Keystone was to be out of business and we wanted to decommission these, do we hold a bond in place to decommission that, or how does that work?
Yeah, most counties have a decommissioning bond requirement. You could do it at the city level. It's normally not done there, but that's usually how it works, is there's a decommissioning bond. So an independent engineer assesses how much they think the removal cost is, and then we post a bond for the, decommissioning cost.
Okay.
Could you, and I don't know if you were planning on doing this, could you give just an overview of the site development and what your facility looks like and what goes into that?
Yeah, sure. There's a very high level conceptual in the presentation, several pages forward. So first, no, that's one we did with the city of Lincoln. That's with the city of Freeport. But you can see that one. So this is just very high level. So once, the steps to doing a project is first we would sign a letter of intent, with us or with whoever you'd pick. It's a 2-page non-binding letter of intent. I think we've provided drafts of that. From that, we'll do just a next level design, a 30% design, get your agreement with that, and then we'll submit to the utility to get approval to build something like this with the utility. In parallel with that, if the utility side's looking good, then we'll go on to 60% drawings and we'll really map out how it's going to work. So that'll include soils testing, any kind of environmental permitting that needs to be done, all of that stuff, to just like you would build a house or a commercial building or anything like that. So all that site development would be done by us. And eventually we would get approval from the town or from the county, whatever approvals are needed, maybe state if there was some kind of historic thing or wetland thing, that kind of stuff. All those approvals would be gotten by us. Eventually we'd have a building and electrical permit and we would start construction. And the construction's pretty quick, like 3 months in the field doing stuff. But getting ready for that, it takes quite some time. It can be a year, of waiting for Ameren to get back to us with the interconnection approval, getting all the town approvals and the county approvals and the state approvals. It takes time, just like any other development, as I'm sure, you've seen with other things. But the construction's really quick once we have all the approvals. So that's kind of the general process. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, that's what we do.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
When you talked about doing all the soil analysis and all that, something I read here a while back, I don't know how applicable it is, that the heat generated from the solar panels and everything really deteriorates the soil underneath that. Is that true, or is that applicable? And if that is true, to where the soil is unproductive, if it was removed, what kind of process or what do you do to mitigate that?
So there is a little bit of heat capture because you've got things on top and there's air underneath that can heat up, but I've not seen anything. And just so you know, I've got a master's degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, been doing solar for almost 20 years. I haven't seen anything that says the soil is irreparably harmed. I have seen some things that say it can be a little bit elevated heat underneath the panels themselves. But the panels are like 4 feet off the ground to give you an idea, because we have to have space for the snow to slough off in the winter. So it's not like they're right against the ground making like a blanket or whatever. And then there's row spacing where you can drive, a vehicle, like a small vehicle, in between it. So it's not all compressed and like a blanket on top of the soil. It's literally just, these panels with several feet off the ground and several feet between the rows. So I haven't seen anything where the soil is irreparably damaged by solar.
Well,
Actually,
I'd had a farmer that mentioned, asked about that. He said, what kind of, any way you mitigate that? Because the way it was described to me from him was that the soil was essentially baked for 30 years and it was non-productive after that. And that's what I'm asking out of curiosity. If there was any precautions, let's just say if you plant some kind of foliage or something underneath it, any considerations, or if that was even part of the equation.
well, there's actually, not with this type of solar, but with the larger fields in Illinois, there's a whole thing for what they call agrivoltaics. So putting pollinator-friendly plantings underneath, and then also putting, actual plants that prefer the shade, like strawberries or something like that, I'm not a farmer, I don't know, but things that don't like the direct sunlight, and doing that together with the solar. We're included in ours is like low growth vegetation underneath. It's not rock underneath it. It's not dirt or anything like that. And we like pollinator friendly. So that's typically what we do. And we're happy to work with you within reason, to find something that's good underneath the panels and that doesn't grow too high and that's good for the surrounding area. So pollinator friendly, low growth is our standard offer, but if there's more you wanted to do within reason, we're open to it too. But it's not just like we put rock underneath there and it bakes for 30 years. As I said, there's a very slight temperature rise underneath the panels, but not significant.
Wouldn't that be relevant to the height of the panels? How much heat is gone ahead and absorbed by the soil? I mean, if it's 4 feet off the ground, it'd be different than if it was 10 feet off the ground. And
Sure.
And all that. I just didn't want to get in a situation where it was, let's say the system was removed and you've got essentially a desert underneath it. And that's the reason I'm asking that question.
Yeah, I understand, and I don't think that's a concern. We can, if that was something you wanted us to look at, we can take a look a little more and look at some of the scientific literature. As I said, the only thing I've ever seen is a slight increase in the heat underneath, but not a baking of the soil, a damaging, permanently of the soil. But we can pull some of the scientific literature if you guys are interested and that was a concern.
At this point, I'm just asking the question. I just wanted to hear your opinion on it or hear if that was something of concern. I didn't know if that was a concern, if you remove part of the topsoil to stack off the side for later. And then just in case, that's just all I was asking. So.
Yeah, it hasn't been an issue in any of our other projects. I mean, we're your partner for a long time, so we're willing to do what it takes to make it right. And we would work with you to look at the scientific literature. I think as long as we have good plantings that are taking root underneath, that are good for the soil and, easy to maintain and not impacting the solar, that should be good enough. But again, I'm not a botanist. I'm not a farmer either. So we would work with you to make sure that what we're doing makes sense.
All right. What kind of panels are you guys putting up? I mean, if we agreed to something like that, and how are you going to install them? Is it going to be a cement base? Is it just going to be post? They're driven into soil or what?
Yeah, so they're driven pile foundations. They're 2 panels high, like in portrait. And it's either aluminum or steel beams, and then sort of a structure that the panels sit upon. It kind of looks like what you can see in the picture if you're still able to see the presentation. But yeah, they're driven piles. The pile depth is done from soil analysis and push-pull tests. So civil engineers have to certify the size of the pile and the depth of the pile given the soil conditions. But yeah, they're driven in every several feet, and then there's a structure on top of that, and then the panels sit upon that.
Well, that,
He's had enough.
Says he's talking.
Can't hear you, Mike. Oh, there you
It cut out for a second there. I'm not sure if there was a question or if you heard my last bit.
how about now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
Nope, no.
go.
There we go. Okay, I zigged when I should have zagged on my button here. Gosh, what train of thought? Okay, what kind of wind resistance will these sustain? Because the county presentation, one of the things I was concerned about, it only had were guaranteed to withstand a 60-mile-an-hour wind, which is really not, of course it's ground level, but I mean, say there was a straight line wind, what are you building? What standard are you building those for?
So it's up to whatever the wind code in the area. That is the minimum that we build to. I've never heard of 60 mile an hour. I think in most everywhere in Illinois, it's like 110, I think. I'd have to ask the engineers, but it's the same to any kind of building structure, right? It's not 60 mile an hour. I'm pretty sure it's 110 is the minimum in Illinois. We've had some issues on some of our projects where, these Derricos have come through. They haven't really done much damage. There's been a couple broken panels, that sort of thing. It's more the fence than the solar system, honestly. We've had to repair some fencing just from some of these Derricos that have come through Illinois the past couple years. But we have property insurance, and if it's a large enough issue, then our insurance fixes it. But we haven't had major issue even with Derricos going through. If a tornado hit, that would cause a problem. That would cause a big problem.
Well, I'm just bringing that up because that was a presentation I heard from the county, and I was really concerned. So 60 mile an hour is really nothing. Your shingles are rated 117 on a standard shingle. So I'm just asking that question to see what you would say.
Yeah, we got to build to code, just like anything else, and it's not 60 though. I haven't heard of that anywhere in Illinois, and I'm pretty sure it's 110 is the minimum.
Well, that was what was conveyed to everyone listening at the county, and nobody seemed to question it.
I'm just searching it as we're talking.
Well, I hope it's more than that, but like I said, none of the county board members even questioned it.
119 miles per hour. Does that sound right for Illinois? We'll check and we'll get back to you, but it's over 100 miles an hour. I've never heard of anything 60 mile an hour. These are big
well, like I said, I'm just reiterating what the people making the presentation from to the county for different ones were saying, and that's why I'm asking how your system was being built. If it's built for higher standards, because I would hope it would be, and if it's built to 117 or 19, it's not going to stop a tornado anyway. But that should be sufficient.
Right. Yeah, you can't stop a tornado, but apart from a tornado, any kind of normal, low level extreme wind like these Derricos, that sort of stuff, we've been fine. I mean, really, the only issue has been the fencing. On one project, we put slats in to sort of shield the array from view on the outside. We didn't do the posts for the fencing. It was done after the fact, and that was a mistake because the posts weren't thinking in extra pressure you get when you put the slats in. So that was our fault on one of our projects. But in general, yeah, we don't have issues even with these Derricos that come through. And it's all up to code, you know, it's got a building permit, it's got an electrical permit, you know, that sort of thing. And it's definitely over 100 miles an hour.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if the county has code or not, but I just wanted to ask a question.
Yes, sir.
A question, you were speaking of fence, so you do the fencing, for this project, it'll have a fence around it?
Yeah, so it's so what we do is we fence the entire system, and then what's in the fence is our responsibility to take care of. So, you know, if it needed to be mowed or anything like that, that's our responsibility. Since it's a treatment plant, generally there's a fence already. So we try and work with your fence that's already there. So there already is security, you know, on the site. So this might be outside your fence. I'm not exactly sure where your fences are, but we expect that it has to have a fence all the way around it, and it has to for code because it's high voltage, and you know, you don't want people wandering in and out of there. So it will have a fence around it. We just sort of work with your existing fence. If it's, you know, if we've already got a border on the east, we're not going to build another fence. We're just going to hook up to your existing fence on the, say, on the west, for instance. I don't know.
Thank you.
I have a question, and I know you already answered it. I apologize. Why do we not want to produce more than the plant can use? Is there an extra cost? From
We're paying them. I mean, if we were building it ourselves, we probably wouldn't, but you could build it bigger because it's a one-time cost. If you were to overproduce, like you said, then you get a small.
it's a
fee.
smaller,
But since we're paying them for,
okay.
then if we produce more, we'd be throwing money away.
My question comes from, as the solar panels produce less over the years, by the end of it, it's only 81% of what we need.
Correct.
And
That's
I didn't,
correct.
so I
Yeah,
didn't know.
you don't want to overpay in the beginning. So if you overproduce over 100% of your usage on an annual basis, they pay you wholesale value for that energy, which is like, I don't know, 2 cents, 3 cents, something like that, 4 cents maybe right now with the rates the way they are.
24 cents year 20 or 2025 or what 2053, whatever it is. Is at the low rate then? Okay.
So you just don't want to overproduce, whether you own it or whether we own it. It doesn't make sense to overproduce and get paid very little for that excess production. Although in the out years, like you said, you know, you will have to buy more from the utility, or you could do an additional system, you know, make it larger. There's options down the road, but don't overbuild it. Whether you own it or we own it, you shouldn't overbuild it.
Thank you.
Did anyone ask a question about maintaining, like, where was Dynas, did I miss that?
They do all the.
Okay, so there's not, yeah, so that's the maintenance stuff that we were talking about before, right?
Right.
Right, okay.
Yeah, they'll do all the maintaining.
And to be clear, there's not a ton of maintenance if you guys owned it, right? I mean, there's solar panels that don't move. There's no moving parts, don't make a lot of noise. So it isn't huge maintenance. But yes, any of the maintenance is our responsibility. The production is our responsibility, which is also why we build quality systems, because you only pay for what we produce. If the thing isn't producing anything, you don't pay anything. You've tied up land that's not good, but you wouldn't pay $1. You would just buy it from Homefield like you're doing now. So our incentive is very much to build quality systems, to monitor them 24/7 and make sure that they're producing as good they can, because that's the only way we make revenue. But if you owned it yourself, I mean, the maintenance is not that hard on solar systems, just so we're clear.
you brought up an interesting point. If the system was down, let's just say it catastrophic, it got knocked out for a couple months and we're buying electricity, is it that at whatever, if it's Ameren or home field or whatever, is that what we're going to have to pay? Or can we look at the reduced rate?
So there is in short, and then I'll give you a longer answer. In short, your backup is always the grid. You're always connected to the grid, and whatever you don't get from us, you buy from the grid. And that rate is whatever rate you have for your excess, non-solar energy. In the contract, if there's a catastrophic event, there's a force majeure section. So if it's destroyed by tornado, there's a force majeure section in our contract that talks about, well, are we going to rebuild it or are we going to take it away? What are we going to do if it's destroyed, right? And we're happy to share our contract if we haven't already, and that's all spelled out within there. It's kind of that it's catastrophic or it's minor. Inverters go down, but usually it's one inverter and we'll have a repair person fix it. Not a big deal, not where the whole system goes down for 3 months. Whole system going down is like tornado hit, meteor hit.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know if we own the system, do we continue to stay connected to the grid? So if the same thing happened to us, and we owned it, it would just automatically go back to Ameren, or we're buying up our electricity?
Yeah, it would be exactly the same.
So no matter what, you always stay connected to the grid.
You're always connected to the grid. That's right. Your grid is always the backup. That's correct. And that's whether we own it, whether you owned it. That's just how net metering works. You're integrated with the grid. You're like a power plant, just a really small one that only works in the day when the sun's shining.
Very smart. Very sure. Does anyone else have any other questions?
So the next meeting, I'll have an updated side by side, and then you all can continue to discuss and give us some direction of where you want to go with it.
I have one question. So when we have the side by side next meeting, will we have that, will we be asked at the meeting to be making a decision, or we'll just still be discussing? I just want to understand how much time we need to prepare for that next meeting.
You can make a decision whenever you would like to make one.
Okay.
You, as early as next meeting, you can make the call, but if you want some more time, you can take as much as you want.
Okay, and do you feel like these side by sides are gonna be like, we're gonna really be able to compare apples to apples? Or is this gonna be kind of like one side has their terms this way and so they won't be side by side? Or I'm just trying to wrap my brain around where we're going the next time.
I'll try to have the key points differentiated between the two options. And I'm working with the gentleman that was here at the last meeting to get it into the spreadsheet format, which our consultant put into place. Just looking at it, the numbers that our consultant gave us are pretty spot on. So the numbers will be pretty much in the ballpark of what we've looked at this time. But I'll have the updated figures and I'll just have the notations of,
I thought the consultant had us at 1.4 if we bought it.
you mean the purchase price?
Yeah,
Around that, yes.
yeah. I mean, he said 1.1.
1.5 or something.
I guess I'm confused on what you're asking exactly.
You said the comparison's pretty spot on. I thought you
No,
said.
he's talking about what they have put,
Oh.
their numbers are
Yeah.
spot on.
So the other one will be different from where we were before.
Yes,
Yeah.
but we're gonna put it in the format of the 25-year side by side. That way you can say, okay, for 25 years, what are you gonna say? And then just the two, to have them side by side. And then if there's different points for each, I'll have those pointed out. And then after you look at it at the next meeting, if you want something else, I'm happy to get it, and you can take as long as you need to.
And can you, because what we had heard was that you might be able to get this rolled into the loan at the sewer plant at the 1.8.
I've looked into that and we are not able to do that.
Okay, so that guy was wrong.
Correct. And so there's nothing that says you can't apply for it. It's the fact that you have to have it scored and have a chance to be eligible for the funding. And our engineers have talked to IEPA, and the feeling they're getting is that it wouldn't. And I even asked, we just met to get an update on the Elm Street project that we're doing, and I asked if we could roll that in, and it wasn't included in the scope for the loan that was approved for that project. So we could, you could apply for that, but you have the turnaround time for the loan period. And you are making the bet if you're going to get it scored well enough to actually secure the low interest dollars. And the turnaround period is somewhere between 6 and 9 months.
So if we wanted to, we could look at doing that, but take out a conventional loan and pay it back with that loan, or is that?
I don't know that, but I can find that part out.
So what guy are you talking about? Your guy?
No.
No, what guy? This guy?
The guy that, no, the people we met up there at the IML
Oh,
said that since it was a sewer plant, you know, it was an addition to the sewer plant, that it should be able to, like I said, it could be
I don't
done
know.
at that 1.8% interest.
I would suspect that they maybe didn't recognize how far along we were in the process.
So like if we were at the beginning of the process, then we could have included
Yeah,
it.
if you could have showed it in your design work and everything, so. All right, I don't know that we have any other questions. I thank you very much for your presentation.
Hopefully it was
And-
helpful, and let us know if you have any other questions.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
So when you do the side by side comparison, can you include in that what the insurance costs would be if we purchase it and we own it? Or like insurance and liability versus not owning it?
They're only the insurance for purchasing it.
Right.
So I'll bid.
Right, that's just something to take into
And
consideration.
I have briefly talked with IMLs that they can only give us an estimate because they don't actually know what the system is exactly. But I will have that for you though.
Move on. We have lots on, let's see. What we're moving on to, item number 2 under new business, discussion, budget discussion, in your packet, you have, some additions and improvements to Parks and Recreation things. Basically, this is just for discussion purposes. Joe has also, given us a couple meetings ago, paperwork to fill in so that for budgeting purposes, if you have anything that's on your wish list or your project list that you would like to see done, this would also tie into that. As far as these items that are in the packet tonight are just some things that have currently been brought to our attention as far as the baseball mound, and also, you know, we need to be thinking about the bidding for the weed control and the overall groundwork out of the park. And, you know, if there's anything in addition that you want to add to that, otherwise we have the format of what we normally send out for bids for the companies that for that, on what that would cover. If you want anything in addition to that, a specific item or a project, now would be the time to talk about it, so we can discuss on how to get that in the project or in our budget. So
Yeah, so can I just kind of put my 2 cents worth in, I guess, is what that's about. So when we did the strategic planning, the parks pursuing, park facility improvements and development of parks and recreation programming was one of our goals that we came up with. And, we had an implementation year of things relative to 2025. There was, something on there for, so I'll kind of backtrack a little bit from that. So one of the objectives that we came up with also was we need to have revenue source. We're operating under, we're trying to get a handle on things, so to speak, and we don't have a revenue source. We haven't due a revenue source. It is something we need to do. We've talked about a sales tax referendum, but we haven't gotten back to the weeds of that. And so maintenance is important. I think there are needs and wants. We, as a board previously, we kind of stood ground. We did a little bit, we kind of stood ground with the pickleball when that came forward, and they did a lot of things on their own, and that's fabulous, and it was great to see. And so I just think that those are kind of things that we need to keep in mind as we're moving forward and discussing these things. I don't think that we shouldn't, I think we should consider things, but I think that we should move cautiously until we get things in place that we identified of things that we were going to do. So there's my 2 cents about that. And if anybody wants to discuss it or has questions or.
What are the things that you previously identified that you were gonna do included in this, or is that something, what you're looking at, is that something from?
No, that's,
no,
the strategic plan, did they not get copies of the strategic plan when they came on board?
It would have been one of the very many documents that was. So it's,
Okay.
and I can.
So-
definitely-
So let me read through
Okay.
the objectives. So we were going to create a staff and village parks and recreation department, the director. Currently, village staff is doing that.
Right.
And that's a lot to be putting on them. We talked about the revenue source. We talked about the rail trail and improvements and things, what that means for our village. We came up with an objective of designing and constructing village sports facility improvements, which goes along with some of the things that we're talking about. Designing and constructing a community recreation center, and then the consideration of a park district or whatever to maintain things and moving forward to really get a handle on things. I think that, and I don't know all the details, but I know in the past, like the park was created out over there, and I just don't know how much detail was put into who was going to maintain that and what the upkeep was going to be. And so moving forward, these are things that we have identified that we need to do, and we don't have a revenue source for it. And so I think that's putting us in a predicament. So yeah.
Yeah, I said I wasn't on quite yet when they first started working on the park project with the park initiative. There was a nonprofit group that was a community park initiative who was kind of the core group that actually wrote the grant and worked on all that. And that was at the time when we took on the telecommunication tax. And I think the thought behind that would be enough to pay the bond payment throughout, and then eventually that would be money towards the park. But unfortunately, because of changes in the law and different things, that's changed the formula on what we get for telecommunication tax. So that has steadily decreased over the years to where now it's just pittance of what we get that goes towards the, so we've been subsidizing the park bond payment from general funds now for the last probably 3 years or more. But we will still get that very small portion of that. And the bond is, if I remember right, I think that bond payment will be finished in 2025, I think. Do you remember off the top of your head, Joe?
Sounds right.
Yeah, it seems like that's about right. So we're getting really close to wrapping up bond payment. So that will be good. But the amount of money that we're really going to be recouping from the telecommunication tax is still very, very small. But then The other thing too, since Joseph, we have combined and started our own park with the park bond to kind of monitor our expenses for the parks and things too. And so we've included the farm ground income that we get out there off of the park, using it towards income for the park too, because in reality, it is park ground. So we decided that that really makes sense, that should be going towards funding of the park. So basically, that's your two sources of revenue for the parks. So years ago, that actually I was early on when I was a trustee, and I can't remember exactly what year it was, but they we promoted the sales tax revenue for infrastructure, and it was based upon, we advertised it to the community for stormwater, because we had a stormwater master plan that wasn't able to do much because it was very costly plan. So the only way we knew we'd start aiming towards getting projects done with our stormwater if we had a designated fund for that. So all the money that we get from that additional tax money goes straight to our stormwater. And it's been a huge help for stormwater projects. I mean, we've been able to chip away at some of these stormwater issues in the community. And by having a dedicated source of revenue, it's been so helpful. So that's why the first thought came to our mind would be an addition. You can do like a 0.5-cent sales tax increase, but you have to do it through a referendum. But it would not be a tax that would affect people's property taxes. And it would be a tax that's widespread for anybody who comes and shops in the community, buys gas in the community and all those things. So it's one that's not as harmful, that people tend to agree a little more with, especially if you have it going towards a designated project or a designated fund, or it's just not going to your general funds too, that, you know, the community would maybe see the need for that, and, you know, there's potential for that, but that was just one train of thought for potential revenue to be dedicated towards our parks. I don't know that you would ever get a park district to fly, because that would be a whole nother taxing district. So I don't see that as ever being something that's going to take hold in, you know, our community, but those are just some of the things that
They were just ideas that.
yeah, those are ideas, so. But anyway, and like I said, if you guys are new, you may have some other ideas on what would make sense, but those are just some of the things that have been talked about in the past, but because it's always been, you know, this way. I mean, you're sharing, when you're prioritizing what needs to be done in the village, you know, sometimes you know, our parks are extremely important to our community and our, you know, young and old alike. But sometimes when you're fighting with filling potholes and maintaining sidewalks and streets and stuff, sometimes there's a huge balancing act there that goes on trying to make it all go as far as you can. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
Is there you know, funding do you have the money to pay for a Parks and Rec like director without forming a separate park district, or a Parks and Rec director, or whatever you might want to call them, could generate some income? I know you need another real source, but by hosting tournaments and stuff, you know, here in town. Money.
Yeah, I mean, if you did your tournaments and things, I mean, of course, it's gonna generate some additional revenue. But as of right now, with the fees that we have set and stuff, it's still never gonna be enough to pay for what you're putting into your parks. Grant you, if you had a park director, that would be also another additional thing, that if you had someone that was on staff that just focused on the parks. Now, of course, you know, there might be opportunities that person could, you know, work with a group to host some community initiatives where you would have some regular fundraising, you know, set through like a foundation just set for the parks. A lot of communities do that. I know Muhammad, you know, has a foundation that a lot of their projects, I mean, of course, they go out to grants, And then whatever, usually there are matching grants, so you have to have funding come in to match those grants. But they have a foundation, then they have those matching funds, so it doesn't hurt their general budget, you know, quite so badly. And I know they do a lot of projects with their schools too, but I know the one that early on when we started, you know, with the whole sports complex and different things, is we took a little field trip to Charleston. And because they don't have a district either, it's done similar, you know, as we do. And I know that was kind of a big thing that they have, is they have a foundation that does a lot of community initiative type things. So if there's a park in need, you know, say you need a new playground at one of the parks, you know, they have this group for this foundation, then they will pull together a fundraiser designated just strictly to replace a playground equipment or something. So, you know, those are all things that to work with, but then you do have to have someone specifically who, you know, either you have a set foundation who's guiding that, and like I said, the park director, which of course, you know, that would be something, you know, we would have to once again decide how we prioritize the financing of that type of position. So
Well, if you want to hear my, what I want to add to it is that you have to, the habit of the community historically has been to pay for things, but not pay to replace them. And so you buy things, build things, and then the bill comes due 20 or 30 years down the road to repair them or replace them. And the money isn't sitting there obligated to that thing that you built. So you have to have this conversation amongst yourselves and then be, you know, and consciously decide to change that practice, because it is fun to build things and it's nice to add things. But you are inheriting some stuff that you have to make these decisions on, and the list of things that we want to build and we want to add, as you've seen from your fellow community members and their requests, that's not going to stop either. So there's always going to be a demand, and you are a charming bedroom community, and so parks is very important, and you need to, you know, it's very valid to focus on that. But just encourage you that, you know, you can continue this practice for a while longer, and I don't know exactly when it gets to a point where it has really serious consequences. You know, but I think if you can change this practice soon, it'd probably be better for you. But regardless, you have these 3 formal requests from community members, and that is what I've asked you to contend with as part of our budget prep. If you want to discuss a revenue source, that's a purely political process, and that's something that you all should discuss with each other. But for budgeting purposes for the next year, I would like you all to address this for me so I can or think about it, and then we can come back at the next meeting. But sometime before we pass the budget, I need to know what we're going to put in there. I would encourage you to, at the very least, the ball diamond lights, we need to start that cycle of replacing those, because the ones that we currently have are antiquated, and you know, it very easily, those can start going out very soon. So the sooner we start, I recommend doing one at a time. One bill at a time, so you get those going and get it done in 4 years. But other than that, if you have any comments or questions on the list here, if you want to come back to it next meeting, I can provide more information at that time too.
So are you saying your the $30,000 is a conservative estimate for one field. You're saying do one at a time, but one at a time is gonna be $30,000. Is that what you're saying?
That's high is what I'm understanding.
Okay.
Then we could do it for less than that most likely, but you know, as our luck has been recently with estimates, I would prefer to, you know, put a higher amount in there.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I
Sure.
understood. Thank you.
Any more questions or comments on that? If not, put your thoughts together, and like I said, we need to, get that. Put together those, in time so that we can have that ready for, the budget, so. Send your suggestions and ideas to Joe, and, we can either have it back on the agenda next meeting. If you have more questions, but we'll address it that way. So the next discussion item in our under new business is the 2024 community-wide cleanup. We do that once a year in May. It's usually we tie in with the township. The township will subsidize a portion of that. Last year, did we not split it 50-50? It was
Up to $4,000.
up to $4,000. Anyway, it's a great community service, but it's also an expense for the village, so, but we need to be getting that scheduled, so we need to, decide if we want to continue offering that to the community. It's a one Saturday morning event. People show their ID showing that if the township, you know, ties into that, then we allow those from the township to bring in materials for the cleanup. What are your thoughts on that? I've always felt like it was a good service. It helps people keep their properties cleaned up in the community.
I use it.
Yeah, I said,
You have a really bad looking property.
Yeah.
but,
It's the dumpsters you're talking about.
yes.
So basically, we just need a motion to do it, and if you're okay with it, then we'll get it scheduled and we'll advertise when it'll be.
Nora, is May 4th, is that the weekend of the garage sales?
What'd you say?
May 4th, you know, this has on here, May 4th, 11th, or 18th, and May 4th is when like the spring garage sales are scheduled.
You should do it the week before the garage sales for everybody and put all that garage sale stuff.
Yeah.
I have
Might get it stuff for the garage sales.
well, yeah, if we do it on if the grass was on the 4th or around the 4th, then you could do it the 11th, whatever they did so far.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You'll probably be busier if you do it on the 11th.
The 11th,
After.
it's mainly just staff scheduling. It will be the decision between the 11th or 8th to make sure we can have staff available, but I don't think it'll be a problem, but we'll take the 4th off of that. Does that make sense? And then I'll work with Mike and he'll get his crew scheduled on that.
His graduation.
You need a vote?
Yep.
Was there a motion, I'm sorry?
No, nobody made a motion yet.
Okay.
I'll move to have the community want to clean up again.
I'll second.
Painter,
Yes.
Wolfersberger.
Yes.
Cumming,
Yes.
Page,
Yes.
4-0.
All right, the next item is, discussion on. There was a request to subdivide within our 1.5 miles, which we have this come up occasionally. Someone lives just outside of the village within our 1.5 miles, that's our jurisdiction of making some decisions on. And so we've had one request to potentially waive the subdivision, and if it's the one I'm thinking of, it's similar to what we've been asked before. Is this still the one south of town?
Yes.
Okay.
So in the past, you've already agreed to waive it for Clint Shipley. This is Clifford Shipley, and I don't know how serious they are. They're just basically looking to see if there's any opposition to splitting that lot up. You didn't have a problem, or this body didn't have a problem with Clint's request. He eventually didn't even end up doing it. But I just said I would give a straw poll. So is there, really this becomes more of a topic for you the closer that the property is to your village limits. But this is pretty far away from, this is the edge of your boundary.
So
So
it's like the house is for sale, and I think that he wants to keep the other part, right, and sell the,
I mean, I have no problem with it.
yeah, that's what my understanding was, that he wants to keep the
Yeah.
one
Did
portion
he
of
even
it.
say how many lots he was considering?
two.
Just two? So yeah, it was a very minor
I mean,
subdivision.
just chipping off a piece to keep and selling the rest, I believe. I don't have a problem with it.
There's two.
I don't have a problem.
I'm fine.
Okay, we're good to go.
Old business. Joe has some results and discussions we had already previously sent out the RFP for the property out by the sewer plant. I will turn that over to Joe to discuss what he has with that.
Unless you want to discuss it, I wasn't really planning on discussing that, but
Well,
we're.
this is results of
You're
discussion.
right, that's it.
I'm just going by what I read there.
You are right, no, I do want to just hand out the packet that was submitted to us. I have more copies that I'll make sure that you have. And then at the next meeting, we need to, probably talk it out, and then I'll get support for them, and I'll send a digital version of this as well. We had one bid, a qualified bidder that would be able to, do the work, and, I have some pictures of previous, properties that they've done, so, it's kind of surprising to get one. I spent a lot of time talking with up to 6 different developers, and I was expecting, at least one more, but, regardless, please take a look at it, and then we can follow up at the next meeting. I'll get some.
You can have mine, you can send it out. Right?
Yeah, I'll send it.
Yeah. So, all right, well, very good. See, that was a mini discussion, so. All right, in your, Joe has put in front of you the monthly staff report for your review. Joe, do you have any additions for that?
Nope.
So you can read over that. If you have any questions or anything after reviewing the packet, feel free to contact Joe on that. I will say, from my understanding, I know I only got one remark, but you guys did a great job cleaning up after our little snowstorm that we had on the streets and things. I think overall everybody in the community was pleased with that. So please pass that on to our public works department, that once again, they did a good job getting out there and clearing off our streets in a timely fashion. So that's always appreciated. And I think the majority of the community appreciates that very much. So Mark, do you have anything to add?
I don't think so. I mean, Joe and I have been working on a few things, but there's nothing that's a policy level thing that you ought to be aware of. So I think we're humming along, we'll get a lot of stuff done.
Okay, thank you. Tiffany?
No, thank you.
Thing I have is we've got the Samoa banquet on Thursday night. Did Debbie send out the emails to everybody in regards to that? So you'll need to get back with her when you plan to attend. That's in Tolono on Thursday night. I forget who they said their guest speaker was gonna be. Do you remember? I think it had to do about their downtown.
Didn't say.
You didn't say, okay. I know when I talked to their mayor previously, they had talked about, I guess they've got some new development in their downtown, some buildings and things that have had some work done and stuff. And I think that's what their topic was going to be, to highlight some of the things that they've got going on in their downtown. So
if you would like to go, could you please call Debbie by 12 tomorrow so she can get that sent in? She'll need to know if it's just you or if you're bringing somebody else with you as well.
So anyway, but that's really all I have on my updates that I can think of at the top of my head. I can't think of anything else, so, you guys, do you have anything?
I have
Go ahead.
nothing. Oh,
No.
mine's pretty simple. I don't know if we could get an update from Pavlov, because I know they're right by my house, but then when I put in my location, it
They got
says
you in-
we're not available, so
It's gonna be a year, I think.
is that what it is?
Yeah,
So
it was like a year after they.
every time I pay that Comcast bill, I'm like, we're gonna be gone soon. Yeah.
And we've
Right.
not heard any updates on Lolo either, as far as.
I think Pavlov was the one doing all the stuff around town. but
They-
maybe
they
Pavlov-
They are,
It is bad.
and I think they're probably gonna be done before Bolo, because Bolo seems like it's taken a lot of
Yeah.
extra time to get through town, so, but anyway, anything else?
I just wanted to be finding out about the spring lamp at the full way that has been working ever since the construction started.
No, I haven't, but I will.
Is that on us still, or would that be back on the?
Totally. Slipped my mind from the last meeting, and I will.
Thank you. Well, if nobody else has anything to add to the meeting, then is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.